When I was a little boy in the 2000s and 2010s, I steered clear from Disney Channel whenever I could. Shake it up, get that malarkey off my screen. Where are the cartoons, Disney? Back in those days, all they had for animation was Phineas and Ferb and like nothing else. No wonder the offerings on Nick and oh yeah, Cartoon Network were more appetizing. It's true Disney Channel didn't have much in the way of animated series back then, but that didn't mean they weren't still testing the waters. Enter Shorty McShorts Shorts, a pilot program from Disney that ran from 2006 to 2007. It was almost their answer to Nickelodeon's Oh Yeah cartoons and CN's What a Cartoon. Only a decade later, and not as successful. There was a very small amount of these pilots produced, and an even smaller number that actually got developed into a full series. For comparison, the What a Cartoon block on CN aired pilots for well-remembered shows like the Powerpuff Girls, Dexter's Lab, Courage the Cowardly Dog, just to name a few. This gave us Fish Hooks, Shizao, and Growing Around. That last one's not even official. Mr. Enter just took the premise. Elephant in the room. We're not going to be able to avoid Mr. Enter if we're going to be talking about these pilots, which we are today. His old video is one of, if not the only ones, covering Shorty McShorts. Unaired or rejected pilots have been an interest of mine for a while now, so I thought they'd be fun to go over with a different point of view. There's a lot to dive into, actually, including pilots made by some well-known people, and ones that Mr. Enter didn't even bring up back then, either because they were lost or unaired. Yes, today, folks, we will be ranking every non-lost Shorty McShorts short from worst to best, either for how well they'd work as a TV show or for how entertaining they are on their own. Again, this is really just for kicks. Like that Butch Hartman video, I can only say that much about these, and I'm not the ultimate authority on what would be a good TV show or not. That being said, I know for a fact which one of these deserves to be dead last, and not for the reason you think.
I want to bring that thought to life with a show that I call Growing Around.
It's the Growing Around one. Flip-Flopped, aka the prototype for Growing Around, is unironically the worst out of all of these. Unbelievably bad premise, bad animation, voice acting, all around, it's not good. The premise here is that the adults are kids and the kids are adults, which raises a ton of questions. I'm not even sure if the kid adults here are like the brother and sister or kid husband and kid wife. I'm sorry, how do you look at this and want to make your own version of it? A version that, by the way, goes more into the world building, raising even more questions. The kid voice actors here don't do a great job. The designs are okay, but the tweens are very basic and jittery in this really unprofessional looking way. This has the energy of when a live action show does an animated segment and they just get an intern to cobble something together in After Effects. A lot of these other ones clearly use Flash and look great, so that just makes this look worse. It's giving the Little Sam and Cat show.
I'm a Model 5 of the Handyman's Robotics and Unit Repair System, but you can call me Hand Unit.
Already an unreleased Shorty short. So this short is listed on an official internal document, but was never put on TV, and only exists as a work print on YouTube with no background music for some reason. The premise of Little Man Dan and his big fat hand is that this kid has a giant hand that's attached to him on this noodle arm that stretches to infinity. Also, the hand is alive and is like a little brother. Am I weird for thinking this looks gross? Not like horrific, but at least gross to the point that it wouldn't be a Disney cartoon. Could you imagine this airing alongside like Hannah Montana and Sunny with a Chance? The pilot has the titular Little Man Dan go to the school dance, leaving his hand behind so that it doesn't upstage him. Han sneaks out, however, and does just that. Dan's upset with him, but after some shenanigans, they make up in the end. A lot of these, the best of these might I add, work as standalone shorts. If it weren't for the body horror premise, it would be a lot higher because it is sort of fun as its own little story. The art style is more detailed than a lot of them, but the animation looks a little cheap. Also, if I'm gonna be a nitpicker, the character designs can be a little inconsistent. There's like this Smiling Friends-ass character who shows up halfway through.
Bigfoot is real, and he tried to eat my ass.
My Mom Married a Yeti has a great art style, but that's all I can say about it. The story here doesn't leave that much of an impression. Like the title would suggest, it's about this family where the dad is a Yeti and the mom is a human. Their kids are worried about the dad embarrassing them at the upcoming school dance. Not the last time we're gonna see one of these that have a school dance, by the way. That's a strangely recurring theme here. The dad ends up causing chaos, seeing the kids dancing with these disturbingly older students and confusing them for wolves. He goes beast mode, but the kids end up snapping him out of it and saving him from falling off the roof. I don't really feel like they set up who the main character was here. The title of this is My Mom Married a Yeti, so you'd think it would be about the kids, but it really feels like the dad was given more focus while the kids aren't that developed. At least not as developed as the 16-year-old third graders, apparently. There's some sweetness to it at the end, but if none of these family members stand out as characters, then what's the point? The little girl here, I think, is one of the Loud Houses, and there's a surprising VA role from comedian Jim Gaffigan as the Yeti. If you recognize him from anything, it'll probably be Hotel Transylvania, but he's had a ton of other semi-notable roles and stuff. I remember as a kid, I saw him at a Great Wolf Lodge when he was there with his family. I wanted to go up and say something, but I was like 10. Alright, I just had to get that story out there. Like I said, the art style here really steals the show. It's the first of these where I can call the look truly great. A lot of these have these flat graphic styles that are just so pleasing to the eye. Even as still images, these designs have a lot of appeal with the simple yet varied shapes. Yeti reminds me of the kind of thing you'd see on a greeting card or maybe a cute picture book from the time. What with the lack of outlines. Despite what you may think looking at it, this had nothing to do with Parappa the Rapper designer Rodney Greenblatt, nor does it share any staff members from all of the other reindeer. The tween animation is still in the cheap tier, it works, but I think it could stand to be a little bit smoother. As much as I like the art, that definitely brings it down at least a few notches for me.
Space!
Intergredients follows a brother and sister in a zany, futuristic space setting. This celebrity chef holds a contest where the first person who can bring him a peanut gets a cash prize or something. The main characters journey to a distant planet, meet a slime monster, get the singular peanut for the chef. That's really all I could parse from the story. And what do I mean by that? Well, the only available version of this is in Dutch. As I said, I was still able to tell what happens, but it's not the ideal way to watch this. This is one where the art style brings up some pretty obvious comparisons, but as far as I know, nobody from Samurai Jack worked on this. Best part of this are all the dynamic angles and the smooth movements, which makes all the action flow really well. If the idea here is that the average episode would be these characters go to X random planet to get a thing, I feel like it would end up pretty formulaic. They'd really have to squeeze a lot out of that premise because of how specific it would be. Is it just this one chef making them get stuff, or is it a whole world where food is this big commodity? Overall, I do have to rank this pretty low because I think those questions would be answered if I could actually understand all the dialogue outside of 2 or 3 words.
Silence.
Can I be real? As distinct as all the art styles are, I can't not look at Mascot Prep and think Beaver Slop. I'm sorry, the character designs here are giving Scaredy Squirrel. Already off to a bad start, but Mascot Prep has a very odd premise that, while not as disturbing as others, still makes you wonder a lot of things about the world the characters live in. So, Mascot Prep follows a school for mascots, who are all learning how to advertise their given product. The main character is a dude with, get this, no product. Of course, this is all symbolic, if that makes sense. It's like Food Fight. These aren't actual people, but then if these are just abstract representations of corporate mascots, then what does the world outside the school look like? Do these high schoolers have parents? I think it works. There's obviously some sort of metaphor for being young and not knowing what you want to do in life. You know, like getting your cutie mark type stuff. I think it could be really poignant, dare I say. But with how strange this world is, you'd really be confined to just the school setting. It would just be a generic high school show with random furries and object show characters. Honestly, it might have been a precursor to Gumball with all these wacky, varied designs. It's going above some of these others because I can actually picture in my head what more episodes of this would be. They set up a lot of what I imagine would be reoccurring characters, and I like the relationship between the blue guy and the germ. Honestly, OTP, I ship it.
Beep boo boo bop boo boo beep. No, man, you're thinking of beep boo boo bop boo boo bop.
This one was in the Mr. Enter video, but he didn't give it the time of day, so I gotta pick up the slack. Troy Ride follows 3 aliens who are stuck on Earth and have to inhabit a robotic body and go to school. A unique premise for sure, sort of a chaotic neutral Invader Zim. Even more so, Richard Stephen Horowitz, Zim himself, voices one of the aliens. The plot of the pilot has them trying to get these moon shoes out of one of those comic book mail-in thingies. The ads in the comic make it look like they really make people people fly, and they see it as their ticket back to their home planet. The rest of the episode has the 3 aliens trying to steal it while repairing the broken arm of the robot that keeps hitting the Elon Musk throughout the day. In the end, they see this bully character trying out the moon shoes, and of course, they don't work like they wanted them to. Rest in pieces. Art style here really carries. The duo behind this, Bucky Fukumoto and Brumby Boylston, isn't really known for work in the animation industry. Each of them have more credits on directing music videos. It looks like one of, if not the most expensive of these, in terms of animation budget. I noticed a few CG shots here, and they really went all out with the shading on these character models. Great background music too. The score has this synthy feel to it, same as the theme song, which I really like. The alien characters are not really defined enough. Having one of them that straight up speaks gibberish wasn't the best choice because all you're left with is the main one, who's the determined leader, and the other guy, who I think is meant to be the smart one. I think what you need for a show like this is for the mecha antics to be fun, which they definitely have, but also the alien characters and their personalities have to be fun to watch. I wouldn't call these guys boring or unlikable, but they don't leave the biggest impression with their interactions. Troy isn't perfect, but I think dismissing it as purely a ripoff of some Eddie Murphy movie is disingenuous. It's got quite a lot going for it. The art style of Lumberjacksons leans a lot more into that classical 2D Disney look. This and Little Man Dan are so drastically different than the rest of these in terms of art that they might have gone unaired because of that. I don't know. Looking at the unaired ones as a whole, there doesn't seem to be any real logic. Anyway, Lumberjacksons follows a family from Detroit who moves up to snowy, rural Canada. The dad and son seem to fit in, but the girl doesn't, as shown by a series of gags. They end up surprising her with a Detroit-themed party to make her feel welcome. We're also introduced to some colorful side characters, like the girl's classmates, including a Quebecian who only speaks French, and this kid with a parka who the brother bonds with through feeding a moose baked beans and making the moose fart, and the farts propel the moose like a rocket, and they tie a rope to it and ride it. There's gotta be something with Canadians and farts in general. I don't know what it is. And I checked. This was created by a Canadian. Also, I can't promise that this will be the last mention of farts today. As I said before, the animation is a lot different. I have a few minor complaints with it, like timing and frame rate. Some of the digital tweens can be distracting, but as a whole, it looks like the people behind this had a lot of talent. The environment designs are pretty cozy as well. It does everything a pilot needs to. You see the family, some of the townsfolk. I think it had some potential, but with the way this looks, I imagine they'd have to tweak the style to fit within the standard TV pipeline. Even if this didn't take off, hell, it wasn't even aired, the director of this, Cal Brunker, ended up having a successful career directing theatrical films. Anybody remember the 2013 classic Escape from Planet Earth? No, not that one. That other one. Oh, and the Nut Job 2?
Love is in the air. Wrong. Ghastly.
What is this nonsense? Bad Hair Days is yet another unreleased Shorty McShort short that starred Selena Gomez right at the start of her Disney tenure. She voices this emo girl who likes this orange guy, but orange guy's in a love triangle with this blonde chick and the dude with the crew cut. The pilot focuses on said love triangle. Orange tries to steal crew cut guy's phone to sabotage them, but it ends up failing when the blonde girl hears the orange guy's SoundCloud mashup and thinks that the crew cut guy made it. Mashup guy is distraught, but Selena Gomez is there for him, and they pants the crew cut guy. This one isn't necessarily good, but it's so fascinating. I just really vibe with these simple, chibi character designs. This couldn't have come out in any other era than the mid to late 2000s. Reminds me of those American Idol Happy Meal toys they had when I was really young. And with the focus on relationship drama, the skateboard guy, and Selena Gomez, this feels like the sort of thing Disney would greenlight. I can really picture that for some reason. Animation is on the cheaper end. These tweens are very basic. I don't even think you can call it tweens. There are barely any in-between frames. They're just sort of jittering around. It's the biggest curiosity here. In an alternate universe, this ended up getting 7 seasons and is part of those POV you grew up with 2010s Disney Channel TikToks. Next is Bottle Bag Zip. I initially had this a lot lower, but the overall vibe this has made me bump it up a few spots. When I make a cartoon, it'll look like this. It's in that mid-tier, good looking, but not that much potential for a series. As a kid, I had no idea why they named it this, but after watching it, I get that this is Bottle Bag, and that the zip is his zip code. This immediately lost a lot of points for the very dated Bill Cosby impression here from Kevin Michael Richardson, but it also doesn't show much promise for being a TV show. This grumpy kid and his family watch this Bosselbag dude on TV before the dad announces that they're moving to his town. The kid's against this for obvious reasons, but they do anyway. They meet Bosselbag, the kid lightens up, and that's it. None of the rest of these are origin stories or first episodes, and this is a clear example why. The pacing and character arc of this kid coming around to being in this wacky place comes too suddenly. The funny talking bird just sort of scolds him and he's like, yeah, I guess I'll have fun. You see all these potential wacky side characters in a single shot before they move on and forget them. Nothing really pulled me in. Also, is Bosselbag the ruler of this place? He's the host of the show and the dad's boss? What's the exact dynamic here? This gets a lot of points for the colorful 60s, 70s vibe. The hand-painted elements on some of the backgrounds are a nice touch. Even the score has this groovy energy that I really like. The animation is super bouncy too. It really sucks as a pilot, story and humor wise, but if we're going on art style alone, this would be my favorite out of all of them.
One!
Squidward! The robots are running the Navy!
Not the Navy!
I feel like a broken record saying how good the art styles are on all these. You could very well argue that all the Shorty McShorts quality of art is inversely proportional to how good the stories are, and Too Many Robots is yet another example of that. Too Many Robots looks great, but the idea is so half-baked, to the point I feel like there was some sort of executive meddling behind the scenes. The premise is this girl from the country comes and lives with her extended family in the city, the dad being a mad scientist who builds, some might say, an unneeded amount of robots. The dad is an ex-evil scientist. You know, he's reformed, he's good now, yet appears a little too happy to give the main character Digit these robo shoes, like he's hatching some sort of evil plan. Is he still evil or not? It's very unclear in this pilot. There's this line about her making a splash when she uses them, but that happens independent of what the shoes do, something that happens randomly at the school dance. I told you, that was definitely a mandate from Disney that whenever possible they had to include a school dance. So did the dad predict this specifically? It's a really confusing thing to include, and makes me think there was some sort of rewrite. It really feels like the initial idea was for the uncle character to be an explicitly evil mad scientist, but then Disney came in and made them change that because, oh, we can't have a family dad be evil, we're a family network. Because otherwise, in this like 5-minute pilot, why would that be a thing that they dwell on, or even show? I know Dr. Doofenshmirtz from Phineas and Ferb existing disproves that whole theory, but this was in production either right before or during the first season of Phineas and Ferb, where he was a lot more explicitly a villain. As for the main character, she's the other half of this pilot's issues. Digit just has zero agency until the very end. She's hanging out in her room and her aunt comes in like, oh no, the school dance is in an hour. Oh no, one of the robots wrecked my shoes. Don't worry, Digit, I have robo shoes for you. I also might be evil. Dudley and Nestor. From the pilot, Dudley and Nestor do nothing. We're less passive within their own narrative. Sorry to keep going back to the Mr. Enter video, really, but his suggestion of rewriting this so that Digit steals the shoes and doesn't know how to use them would have made the story so much more satisfying. Also, the use of the phrase "too many robots" during the climax, I really wanted to like this one, and it has a lot of potential, and I would have even liked this to be a full series, but the execution of this premise isn't the best. That potential it has is buried under a lot of confusion, but you know what isn't buried under a lot of confusion? These designs. Aw man, this is when it clicked for me that Shorty McShorts really is style over substance. What can I say? It's a really fun progression of that 90s UPA revival style, taking advantage of digital animation with the lack of outlines and motion tweens, in the same camp as Foster's Home, or a more apt comparison, The X's. I know this video sounds like I'm making these things up, but I swear, this was a real show that aired on Nickelodeon at some point. The X's is not fake, this is a real show. I like that so many of these shorts were directed by folks outside the animation industry. They were really pulling from a lot of different places. Too Many Robots was directed by an artist who goes by Attaboy, who's done everything from high-end vinyl figures to children's books to other sorts of illustrations. Not the last time we'll see that, believe you me. Too Many Robots is really disappointing. It's not that the story or premise doesn't work. They could have greenlit this and it would be great, but this pilot in particular is not very good.
Magic Conch, what do we do now?
Nothing.
Dudley and Nestor Do Nothing is one of the more well-remembered Shorty shorts. The premise here is a sort of prototype Milo Murphy's Law. The premise, would this be a full show, is these two kids randomly stumbling into wild scenarios. The intro gives you a different impression than the actual episode. The main duo are less nonchalant about everything that happens in the pilot than what you'd think. For years only going off the Mr. Enter video, I thought the whole joke is that they don't know what's going on, but no, they do. Even with that bit of confusion, it's still a fun pilot. I like the scenes of these two friends messing around. It's a different vibe than a lot of these, and I found their dynamic pretty endearing. Richard Stephen Horowitz, again here as one of them. You will recognize so many voice actors in these things. Carlos Alazraqui, Tara Strong, Tom Kenny, D. Bradley Baker, Kevin Michael Richardson, Scott Menville, and John DiMaggio. Specifically, those two are all over these. 90s kids might recognize the art style here. Director Stephen Holman created the Life with Loopy segments for Nickelodeon's Kablam. This has almost a paper cutout look to it, which means the animation team can get away with some otherwise awkward motion tweens. Most of the characters have these flatter designs, which really sell the look, but some are more detailed, which ends up clashing in my opinion. Definitely carried more by the premise and humor than the visuals. I don't know, I always like comedy that comes from an escalating wild situation, and the dynamic of the main characters was refreshing. Dudley and Nestor was a fun 7-minute short with an open premise that they could apply to a series of 11-minute episodes for sure. I imagine Disney might not have wanted to pick this up because two kids do a new unbelievable thing every episode sounded a little too similar to Phineas and Ferb. I'm really torn on the imperfect duplicates of Dodger Dare. It's a great short, but I can't see the premise leading to a good TV show. Dodger Dare is a kid who somehow found a magical photocopier that can make duplicates of him. But uh-oh, these duplicates of Dodger Dare are less than perfect, some might say. The short has him using the duplicates to rizz up this girl he likes, but they all end up wanting to steal her from him, and Dodger has to kill them using water. Just like that one episode of Gravity Falls that would come out like 7 years later. That's really all I could think about while watching this, but it executes the premise in its own silly way. And the dynamic is slightly different, with him and the love interest actually being the same age, and this love triangle with her and this other nerdy girl. It's cute. Also some nice music, and future Rise of the TMNT designer Andy Suriano gives this an overall great look. The premise of this kid having weird clones of himself works in a short for sure, but I don't know if it's the kind of thing you'd be able to squeeze a whole season of TV out of. There would only be so many times they could make Dodger creates a clone of himself and the clone messes things up interesting. It would end up being really samey. This would be a killer senior thesis film or something. It's one of these I recommend you go watch, but I just don't think it would work as a show, which is a shame. Again, I really liked it.
Hello, 911 emergency. There's a handsome guy in my house. Oh, wait a second, cancel that. It's only me.
Can you tell this was made by the creator of Johnny Bravo? What Total Drama is to Survivor, The Fabulizers is to Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. This crack team of professionals, including a beaver and one of the wildcrats it looks like, help people like this lonely chud become their best selves. All around, this is such a banger. Not only are the character designs fun, but the animation is so smooth, especially on that beaver character. It's also just a fun premise. It works as both a pilot and a fun short film. They rope this kid into the whole fabulizing routine to the point of him getting injured, but in a twist, it ends up making him the most popular kid at school. I really would have liked to see what they would have done with this if they stretched it out to an 11, 22-minute episode. The format of animated reality show is super untapped. The only other example I can think of besides the obvious is Drawn Together, and that's more of a generic sitcom, really. Even if it were more shorts between commercials or something, I really would have loved to see more of this blonde lady, and the Fabulizers in general, yeah.
Look out, he's got a nose!
Got Your Nose is the name of a short starring brothers Horace and Boris. I imagine if this ended up being a show, they'd just name it that. Another unaired one here with both a Dutch and English dub available. Horace is a good guy and Boris is a bad guy, always trying to sabotage the other. Here, Boris steals his brother's nose and runs around town putting it through all kinds of pain. Eventually, Horace gets the upper hand, stealing Boris's nose, and it ends with Horace making a chili so foul that he wraps Boris into oblivion. classy. Speaking of classy, the use of tweens here is really tasteful, and it elevates a lot of the already strong posing. Do I even need to mention how slick the color scheme is? All the characters and foreground elements really pop with the soft blue contrasted with this orange. Overall, this short is one of the most obvious examples of UPA inspiration I've seen in anything. Not only the visual style, but the jazz score and the use of a narrator. I know what you are. If I'd only seen the Dutch dub, not knowing that the English original exists, I still think this would be really high up on the ranking. The big advantage of having the English version available is hearing the specific bits of dialogue. I like how extreme they push the main two's respective good and evil personalities. And you've got D. Bradley Baker and again, Richard Stephen Horowitz as Horace and Boris respectively. It's awesome. I think I might end up putting this higher than I initially thought. I liked it a lot more than some of these others. That being said, from a corporate Disney perspective, it doesn't feel as marketable as a lot of others, like Too Many Robots or Fabulizers. Still a great short, but it doesn't feel very Disney Channel, if that makes sense.
Hey, medic, I like K-pop. K-pop, more like K-pop.
So Boys on the Run ended up getting 3 short films in total. This is the only one that did for some reason. Boys on the Run follows a boy band who get exposed for lip syncing during their concerts and have to hide out while being hunted down by the press, general public, and even the president. In the 2000s, the president getting involved in petty drama with celebrities was fiction. Hashtag topical. All 3 of these have the boys running into a predicament and having a vision of their debatably stereotypical dance instructor telling them to dance their problems away. And it works every time. The 3 Boys on the Run shorts were all pretty formulaic, but I don't think that makes them bad. In fact, these were the ones that made me laugh the most out of all these shorts. There's this absurd sense of humor that carries the whole way through, and these main characters are just so brain dead they end up being super likable. And these designs are just ridiculous. I love this little R2-D2 looking guy, and the dance they have in the intro, they're all absolute reeks. It's just goofy for goofy's sake. I think Disney might have been weary to greenlight it because it was a satire of boy bands, and at the time they were kind of going all in on the... It's a shame because it's a really fun series of shorts. Even if it didn't end up as a show, it would have been great as a little series of more shorts, something to play between commercials even. Now before we get into the final 3 entries, I want to give some more honorable mentions, including the aforementioned Fishhooks pilot, here called Fishtails. According to the Fishhooks fandom wiki, huge grain of salt there, the pilot had slightly different designs for some of the main characters. Bee looks about the same, but we have a disturbingly taller Milo and a more pudgy Oscar. They kinda switched body types in the final show. There's not much I can find about the other 2 unseen pilots, Knights of Now and Sunny County. Not even lists of staff members or anything. Hopefully these get put online someday, and also hopefully in English. Grungy McGee is the last of the Dutch-only releases, and despite that, you know why this is so high up. This looks adorable. I'm genuinely floored Disney wasn't considering greenlighting this. Grungy was created by Anna Chambers, a graphic artist and designer. Again, it's fun to see all these people's unique styles shine through with these shorts. That was the idea behind programs like What a Cartoon, and even though there may or may have not been a few Disney mandates here, you can pinpoint the areas where they let people loose to give the shorts the visual flair that they wanted. The pilot here is that this monster, the titular Grungy, wants to get honey for his bear friend, but ends up destroying this beehive. The bees force him to find a new home for them, or else they're gonna live inside him, I think. The overall vibes bring this one up a ton, and I think it had a lot of potential for merchandising. And you know, Disney is gonna be all over that. Really reminds me of cutesy mascot characters like Domo, or Ugly Dolls, or that one other guy.
My life is like a video game.
Get all your so retro jokes out of the way. Second to best shorty short is Catch One Up, which went unaired but is still listed on the show's IMDb and can be found on YouTube. Catch One Up is about a brother, sister, and their weird pet video game thing that gets into all kinds of mischief. The pilot starts out with the sister being bullied by this neighbor kid who keeps bragging about his Snoopy snow cone maker, which in the universe of the show just materializes ice cream for some reason. The brother feels bad for her and ends up stealing it, but One Up gets the wrong idea and steals a bunch of stuff from the neighbor kid's house. The main kids end up stopping an out-of-control One Up, and all is well. The brother gets a little arc in this, about learning to stand up for his sister. It's pretty sweet. I think the dynamic is a lot of fun. Real Powerpuff vibes here. Not only the very Craig McCracken looking characters, but we've got Tom Kenny as the neighbor and Tara Strong literally doing the Bubbles voice for the little sister. I think because of the slick art style and the fact that they pack some good character moments in the 5-minute pilot, it really makes me want to see more of this. Kid having a wacky pet or companion isn't a new concept. In fact, a lot of these you could say are pretty derivative, but overall, I really would have liked to see more of 1UP. I know what I said about So Retro, but I have to talk about it. For the 2000s, genuinely, it wasn't as played out. I like how they blend the simple pixel art with the rest of the characters, and the chiptune bits in the soundtrack were cute. You probably already figured out what the #1 spot is. It's Shizao, the only Shorty McShort that became an actual show, albeit on a different network. Shizao follows a boy who discovers a super-powered ring that turns him into the titular Shizao, a girl superhero. There's also his sister, the #1 Shizao stan, who helps Guy, the main character, defeat the pilot's bad guys, some random kids. I brought this up when I talked about the actual show a while back. I really like the designs here, and the tween animation works in a way that the final show just doesn't. It's really one of the biggest downgrades, kind of showing the difference between the Disney budget and what they had to work with once it got picked up by Discovery and Hasbro. It had an intriguing premise, no matter how you slice it, and I think watching this without knowing it was a full show, you could imagine the sort of adventures these characters would go on in future episodes. While Shizao would definitely be controversial if it came out today, I think even back in 2009, Disney might have passed on it for fear of backlash. Shizao had potential, and that's what caused it to eventually be picked up. I wish they didn't redesign it. This looks 1,000,000% better, but what can you do? It ended up being a memorable show for people, for one reason or another. Also, the pilot is better because it doesn't have the annoying best friend character. 10 out of 10. I'm gonna be blunt, a lot of these pilots would not be good shows. My take on most of them is that they'd be fine with a few tweaks. Too Many Robots especially comes to mind. I liked a lot of them visually, but that doesn't necessarily translate to being a good show that you'd want to watch multiple episodes of. In some cases like Dodger Dare, these are great individual shorts. I could even see some of them, Dudley and Nestor or The Fabulizers, being great segments on some sort of variety show. The best out of them are the ones where you can kind of look and imagine what more episodes would be like, and I imagine that unreleased Fishhooks pilot. I think Shorty McShorts was worth a second look. Check all these out on YouTube if you want, and I will be taking Too Many Robots and reworking it into my own version, roboting around. Check out the Kickstarter when it drops.